Grand Oracle of Delphi O'Hara RuPaul Charles herself said, "We're all born naked, and the rest is drag." At the moment of birth, we know no language, so we have no identity. In our mind, we are not female or male, nor are we anything between or outside. We know not class or race. We have no conception of good or evil. We shed our placental coats, unhook our umbilical belts, and for the first time, we breathe air. Before our births, we are unconscious, unable to form identity. We want for nothing in the room, and so we are not yet human. In my upcoming nonfiction book on impossible kinks, I compare humanity to a self-conscious bagel. It's my attempt to make psychoanalysis less insanely annoying to read about because, oh my god. And so being bagels, we are defined by the hole in our centers, like hollows from Bleach. We are complete only in the womb, and it is only when we experience lack outside of it, in the moment of our birth, that we become truly human and conscious. It's also only in that exact moment that we are a plain bagel with no flavors or toppings. It is the only moment in our entire lives where we are both alive and naked. Truly naked. So what does that have to do with Drag Race? On March 1st, 2025, Twitter account Drag Crave posted photos of Rosé, a contestant on season 13 of RuPaul's Drag Race, posed in what I would describe as like femme Masc drag. Drag Crave says Rosé looks amazing in those photos, and I agree. I find them really interesting. It seems that was a minority response, though, with plenty of the comments tearing into Rosé as a drag artist and sort of as a person for daring to post this. Why is that? Earlier that same year, on January 30th, Drag Crave posted a photo shoot of season 15 contestant Marsha wearing a dress while out of drag. Here too, plenty of people freaked out, prompting Marsha to respond, "1. I'm obviously not in drag in these photos. This was just a shoot a photographer asked me to do, not my creative direction. 2. The response to these photos is precisely why you don't see me in drag much anymore. You were cruel to me on my season, you're cruel to me now." These two tweets and the reactions to them were part of what spurred me to make my video discussing Drag Race and cruelty, yet I forgot to include them because I'm a good boy, and good boys shouldn't have to think. Woof, woof. So using those two social media moments as a jumping off point, I want to talk about Drag Race and masculinity. Really, that means we're talking about the performativity of gender. Or I suppose if you want to really drill down into it, we're talking about meaning itself. You know, light fun topics for a silly little show where people put the ding in ding-a-ling. Though, really, aren't they putting the gal in ding-a-ling? Maybe Jules Sparkers didn't want to go with that because it sounds too much like a hyper-specific form of vor. Oopsies. 1. What is drag? When Marsha to the third power to the cosign lamented the cruelty of fans, she said she wasn't in drag in those photos. I want to take her at her word on that and accept it, but is that true? Well, to figure that out, first we kind of have to figure out what drag is in the first place. No one particularly knows where the term drag came from. We have guesses, but nothing definitive. The Human Rights Campaign and the BBC both suggest it could come from theater. Hi there, theater person here. See, the thing is that the world used to suck a whole lot more than it does at the moment. One way in which it sucked, well, at certain points in history, women were not allowed to be actors. So if you had a female role on stage, the only way to get it performed was to cast a dude. You need Lady Macbeth ranting about getting de-sexed, you put a boy in a dress. But there's this myth I've seen floating around the years. It isn't because Shakespeare jotted down something like dressed as a girl, abbreviated to drag. No. HRC and BBC suggest it might have originated from the ways that dresses would drag along the floor. Is that lame? You know, I like the Shakespearean origin more as a story. This one isn't sexy, it's kind of dirty, which I guess does make it sexy if you're into that kind of thing. If that's the case, then drag might have originated as the theatrical performance of the opposite gender. That's not really how we understand it today, though, is it? Victoria Scone is a cis woman drag queen. When Maddie Morphosis interviewed drag king Landon Cider on her show Give It To Me Straight, she was a cis male drag king in that moment. When Kennedy Davenport did Little Richard on Drag Race, it was still considered drag. So then drag isn't necessarily performing a gender you are not. It's about the performance of any gender by any gender. RuPaul said we're all born naked and the rest is drag. When Judith Butler says that gender is performative, people often accuse them of saying that gender is performance in the theatrical sense. This is sort of true, in that performance and performative are married, but they're not clones. Performance comes with the assumption that there is an underlying self who exists outside of the performance, a subject, an actor, an I. But is there? I'm about to go on a slight tangent here. Please stay with me, and I promise this is still about Drag Race. This is a footnote from my book Impossible Kinks when I was talking about the transformation kink of animalification. The debate around animal consciousness is rather complicated and a field I'm just plainly not that interested in. Part of the reason it has no concrete answers is because we're still sat around debating what consciousness even is. Perhaps consciousness is the delusion that subjectivity exists, that there is an I to have in the first place. As an absurdist, I don't really care about this. For me, consciousness in the colloquial sense of vague beingness exists and matters because we say it does. We choose to give it some meaning, even if none of us can agree on what that meaning is. It seems most people don't regard animals or plants to hold the same level of consciousness as humans because they do not engage in a language we can truly understand. Consciousness, selfhood, might well be the state of possessing the language to communicate the unease of Lacanian lack. For more on this whole, do animals live in a hell of their own making just like us, OMG, twinsies, debate, see Blackmore's article, Are Humans the Only Conscious Animal? So, okay, I'm very, very sorry for throwing two quite annoying paragraphs at you like that. Like Susie Toot, I'm just being way too cerebral for you guys right now. Let's reword it all a little bit. The question at the root of this is there such a thing as an individual that exists outside of language? When we are born, typically a doctor assigns a gender to us. It's a boy, she might have said when I was born, and in so saying, she made it so. The social constructions surrounding gender and sex do not exist until they are placed upon us. Infants, just coming into consciousness, are not the subjects of gender. They have no concept of it. Instead, they are the objects of gender assignment. It's through language, culture, socialization, and the histories of all of these social and political categories that we slowly come to understand and create the self, or the illusion of self. Gender is both what is done to us and what we do. We are both subject and object, and our subjectification is based on our objectification, which, like, as a sub, yes, please objectify me. Oh, that is very hot. If drag is the performance of gender, then we're all engaging in drag all the time. All the world's a stage and all the men and women are merely players. There is no self outside of the performance. Our eternal longing to put it all down and simply be is a desire to return to the womb, to a time before language and consciousness and lack. The only way to truly step off the stage is to embrace annihilation because it's a great fucking film and more people need to go watch it. The Bear. Was Marsha Cubed correct? Was she out of drag? Well, technically no. Philosophically speaking, she, you, and I are all in drag at all times. When the queens go into the workroom to de-drag, they're not actually de-dragging. It's more like re-dragging. But this isn't really all that useful, is it? If everyone is in drag at all times performing performative gender, then what are the bounds? Things aren't really defined by what they are, but rather by what they aren't, what the boundaries are. So if everything is sex, by which I mean sexuality, I suppose, then everything is gender, then everything is drag. That's the same thing as saying nothing is drag, isn't it? So instead, can we say drag is the artistic performance of gender? I'm not really sure that we can. I mean, we're all real bad at speaking. Have you caught my speech impediments in this video yet? More importantly, saying drag is the performance of gender gives the idea that it's solely about gender, but that's too simple, isn't it? In an interview for Thoughtacy, drag queen Nothing says it's about both gender expression and general creativity. Here's a question for you. Is reading a performance of gender? I don't really think you can say it is, at least not more so than any other human behavior. When musical theater boy Hugh Jackman plays the masculinity-centric Wolverine, is he in that moment a drag king? Why or why not? I don't know if we can meaningfully define drag, but I want to try, so I'm going to posit two things. First, drag as a general concept is all-encompassing. It embodies the way every person conceives of themselves and others. It is dress, movement, language, personality, sexuality, race, and more. It is the performance of performative gender. Second, drag as an art form is itself performative. Note that I didn't say it is performance. A drag artist is one who says internally or externally that what they are doing is drag. By saying so, they are doing so. In that case, when Marsha says she wasn't in drag, she was incorrect from a theoretical standpoint, but correct from a performative standpoint, because the assertion is what determines the reality. I tried to put on somewhat mask makeup for this, but the problem is with me and makeup is I can't really see colors all that well, especially on skin tone, so it's all very confusing to me. So apologies if I look insane. But also I put on lipstick because I thought it'd be funny to put on something femme with it. Whatever. 2. Mask drag on Drag Race. Look, I'm about to talk about the show and people who have been on it. I gave this disclaimer in my last Drag Race video, but I'll do it again here and probably the next time I make one. Do not use this as an excuse to go out and harass anyone. There's a contingent of Drag Race fans who despise drag, drag race, drag queens, fellow fans, queer culture, art in general, LGBT people, and so on and so forth, and it can be pretty confusing looking at them deal with the world. If you're looking for a reason to be weird or rude or cruel, go to therapy. You do not know these people. I do not know these people. We see performances and characters constructed for public consumption. That doesn't make them beyond critique or growth, but it does mean we don't know them. We simply don't. So calm down. I should calm down. Pearl levels of calm. Have I ever admitted that the two people I rooted for in season 7 were Katya and Pearl? On season 5, Alaska performed in the Draggle Rock main challenge as a boy. She was criticized for this during judging. On season 6, episode 2, Milk comes out wearing a beard. It is divisive. A few episodes later, the runway for the Snatch Game episode was Night of 1,000 RuPauls. Milk dressed as Workroom Ru, walking the runway in Masc drag, even though it was filmed, but still. There was a slight approval for this and some heavy criticism. During this season, Gia Gunn would go around complaining about everyone looking like or acting like men, and therefore being bad at drag. Gia would do some of that again on All Stars 4. During the reading challenges, the girls often call each other men, or on earlier seasons, diss each other's fishiness, meaning feminine illusion. Yes, there's a whole discourse there that we're not going to go into today. There's Detox to Roxy and to Alyssa, Ginger to Trixie, Cracker to India Farah, Raja O'Hara to Scarlet Envy, Queen Kong to Pythia, and more. They talk about bulges and tucks. People insult people who choose not to tuck. Michelle Visage has critiqued plenty of Queen for serving boy in one way or another. A bunch of shade comes down to talking about beards, even despite the bearded runway on season 7. The bearded drag queens that have been on the show with their beards during the show have all been on international seasons. In 2025 on the Pit Stop, Plastique Tiara talked about how the UK should keep their bearded queens over there. Plastique does high femme drag really successfully in my opinion, and I'm sure she was playing it up for the drama and the jokes, but this is a constant with a lot of US queens on the US seasons. With all of this, outside of Snatch Game, masculinity, masculine features, and masculine behaviors are all seen as aberrations. It's bad for a queen to look manly, even a little. Why? Why is masculinity often an insult, an aberration, a failure for a drag queen on the show? Given the reception to Rosé and Marsha Cubed, a decent amount of fans think it's all of those things off of the show. All chai tea, no shade, because I like a lot of creamer. Yummy. It's sexism, isn't it? For masculine signifiers to be incorrect on a queen implies, probably on a more subconscious level rather than conscious for those who view it that way, that these same signifiers are a failure for an otherwise feminine person or feminine body. Doesn't this enforce patriarchal standards? For instance, there are hairy women. They have darkly hairy arms, about like mine, or legs, or anywhere else. Some of them have some degree of facial hair. None of those things are failures of womanhood. Some women have strong jawlines and broad shoulders. Some look manlier than I do most days. Some women have bulges. None of these are anti-feminine qualities. They're only anti-feminine if you define femininity against masculinity in a very strict limiting binary, which that type of definitional thinking has been traditionally one of the driving forces behind both sexism and homophobia. When asked about Drag Race's seeming reluctance to embrace drag kings on the show, Prance Dashing said, "There is this outdated idea that the performance of masculinity is less fantastic, whimsical, beautiful, satirical, or larger than life than femininity. In other words, there might be an assumption that masculinity is simply too serious and powerful and scary to embody." I chose the word embody very specifically. There's a subgenre of urban fantasy based around the body switching trope, specifically where people of opposite genders switch bodies. Typically, you're looking at a rather pretty, feminine performing woman and a handsome man of varying degrees of masculine performance on his end. This is what I call a fantasy of spontaneous cross-gender embodiment, building off of the work and terms of Julia Serrano. Now, I apply this primarily toward erotic fantasy and impossible kinks, but for our purposes, let's desexualize it. In gender embodiment fantasies, you aren't really imagining the realities of living as whatever form you think of taking. This is typically an ideal. When a cis woman imagines herself as some more archetypal feminine form, this is a female embodiment fantasy. Sometimes on Drag Race, you'll see queens who are very reluctant to get ugly or outrageous in their performances. You'll see them unwilling to try new makeup or silhouettes or ways of being. Surely this is sometimes just a self-confidence thing, sometimes it's not wanting to be made fun of or not wanting to change. But I think every now and then this is someone running into the limits of a female embodiment fantasy which has been acted out through their drag. Note very clearly that embodiment fantasies are not remotely the same thing as being trans. So if drag is an FEF for you, someone asking you to de-glamorize in some way might break the fantasy. In that breakage, Drag Race is often commenting on and subverting what it means to be an ideal woman. It is playing on and pointing out the contradictions and traps of gender. But then why is introducing masculinity seen as a failure? Is it simply a step too far from the idealized female embodiment fantasy? Does it take that element out of it completely? Perhaps this is the more important question. Why is the idealized female form unmasculine? Is it possible to answer that question without engaging in sexism? Is it possible to even define femininity and masculinity in non-oppressive, non-stereotypical ways? These are social categories created via language construction. Drag Race plays with gender and sexuality and reverence all the time. Ru is constantly pushing the queens to not take things so seriously. So, why is it so scary for there to be Masc drag? 3. Nakedness and Fear. A Marxist writer going only by AJ ends her article critiquing the Butlerian theory of gender performativity by saying, "Most people don't give transitioning a second thought. To this, Hada says, okay. I say, think again. I am no longer selling tickets. I am asking you to join me on stage." Briefly, I want to point out that Marxists may oppose Butler due to the whole materialism versus idealism debate. I find that uninteresting most of the time, but you might enjoy looking into it. I'm not the person to do that for you. I'm inclined towards idealism, but anytime I've read people debating the two, I've only ever come away thinking, wow, you're both very annoying. And that's coming from me. I'm very annoying. If I wasn't going to go through the merits of that debate, why bring it up? 1, so you can go look into it, but 2, it's a delaying tactic. I'm going to do what AJ suggests. So let's think about transition. Gender is a strange topic for me. I don't particularly feel feminine or masculine. In my mind, I simply am. Yet, look at me. I keep my hair relatively short and in a semi-masculine style. I'm Italian, so I'm quite fuzzy. My name, Jared, is a masculine name, and I regularly go by it. When I'm being strict with myself, I call myself Jared. When I'm self-soothing, I call myself Jerbear. I buy men's clothes. I use the men's restroom. When white-ring weirdos pop up in my anti-Republican videos trying to insult my masculinity, it's not hurtful because I don't really care, but I still assert my masculinity in response. I am a man, but why? In my poetry collection, A Museum of Art and Eggs, I talk about my favorite film of all time, I'm Thinking of Ending Things. I state in it that, as far as my gender is concerned, I am a man because I want to be the beloved of a gay man. That is about as deep as it goes. We hear all about how gender and sexuality are not the same thing, and that's true, but that doesn't mean they're entirely separate. My gender, as far as I can conceptualize it, is specifically a gay man. Here's a stanza from that poem. I've never thought too deep on my gender. I have determined I am a man who is not yet a man. In this social construction, my field foundation is I want to be loved by men as a man, a pet, some small rebar creature buried in strong arms that rumble good boy with every toss in our sleep. What does it mean to be a man? What does it mean to be a woman? What if it doesn't mean anything? See, unfortunately, I ascribe to a sort of absurdism. I think people are too caught up in trying to find answers and correctness. In this moment of society where lots of people are lost to conspiracism, many still are lost to the sister cult of reason. That isn't to say things are unknowable, or it's bad to question things, or that science is wrong. No, I just think that there are questions out there without answers, at least not correct answers. An absurd universe is a chaotic one without inherency. Why does X matter? Well, does it inherently matter? What even is a woman is presented as a gotcha question by anti-trans bigots. The problem anyone who tries to answer this will run into is that there isn't really an answer that encompasses every woman. What is a woman? Well, womanhood is performative. A woman is whoever says she's a woman, and at the same time, womanhood is something forced onto people. What is a man? Is there a question with less of an answer than that? Why am I a man? I've never experienced a female embodiment fantasy. For that matter, I don't think I've had a true male embodiment fantasy since I've been an adult either. So then am I non-binary, agender? As a cis man, this is a privileged answer, I know, but I always come to the same conclusion. It doesn't matter. I'm a guy, and that doesn't really mean anything to me. I was bullied growing up for my more feminine traits and interests. To go against masculine standards is to be punished, but I'm kind of into that. No, but on a serious note, do I avoid identification with masculinity and femininity out of a fear of pain and judgment? What am I protecting myself from? What does any of this have to do with Drag Race? Rose did a photo shoot combining the feminine and the masculine. They looked beautiful, in my opinion. And this photo shoot looks at the Drag Race fans who prefer to be in the audience and, like AJ's article, invites them onto the stage. Drag that isn't pure, idealized, archetypal gender embodiment fantasies force you to question everything about gender. Who are they? More importantly, who are you? What do you consider masculine, feminine, or neither? Why? Which bits of those do you perform, and what parts of that performance do you long to wipe away with a makeup wipe? Who are you? The problem with mask drag on Drag Race is that it results in scary, unanswerable questions. You start wondering what isn't drag, and the more you think about it, the more you'll come to the conclusion that everything is. You might have an existential crisis and suffer trying to discover your naked self. You'll wipe off your makeup and remove your wig and peel off your skin, dry your muscles in the sun and powder your bones in the dirt, and still you will be left searching for your own nakedness. Is there such a thing as a subjective I? My answer, perhaps a defense mechanism to not go more insane than I already am, is to say, it's interesting to think about and theorize over, but whether or not I exist ultimately isn't any of my business. I perceive that I exist, and so regardless of whether I do, I will choose what I give meaning and weight to. That's all quite heavy for Drag Race, and yet, isn't that what it's all about? Howdy, and thank you so much for watching. Like, comment, subscribe, share if you're feeling saucy. You can join me over on Patreon if you would like, wherein you'll get these videos and others early. You'll also get to have some fun behind the scenes access to some of my art projects, some more personal vlogging style content, and you'll just get to support me and we'll get to chat about art a whole bunch, which is what I love to do most. You can go over to Amazon Smashwords or wherever you get your ebooks and purchase a copy of my poetry collections, Butterfly Snuff, and A Museum of Art and Eggs, both of which are also available in paperback and hardback. I have a second channel where I'm just reading through a bunch of public domain stuff for the fun of it and through my own work. So you'll get readings of these poetry collections and some short stories and some longer form fiction when I get around to it, and some plays. And I have a third channel where I'm uploading my music and art instead of having it all clog up this channel. So go support those if you feel like it. That content, a lot of it will also be getting uploaded early to Patreon. So if you want all of my stuff in one convenient space, Patreon is the place to go, which would be really cool of you, you know? I hope you have a fantastic day. Do not be rude in the comments. Do not go and harass anybody. And I will see you next time.